Hello, everyone, and good evening. I'm Dr. Krystosik. You're listening to The Other Side of Medicine. And tonight we have a special broadcast for you. I think you're really going to be able to enjoy and be able to appreciate this. We have a special guest with us. It's Greg Kunin, and he is a son of a legend in orthomolecular medicine in the field of nutrition. And Greg is following his father's footsteps and really trying to educate people about the benefits of nutrition and healthy lifestyle. And so we're going to dive deep in tonight into the MTFHR gene mutation and what that means for people who have that problem, as well as how you can get the best utilization out of your supplementation and be able to get maximum benefit from your nutrition and lifestyle so you can live independently healthy, because that's what we're all about here on The Other Side of Medicine, is how to teach you, to educate, not medicate you, but educate you on how to live a healthy lifestyle so you can prevent disease and be able to enjoy life, long life and good health, and be able to and just be active into your 80s, 90s, and 100s and beyond. So we're going to go ahead and invite our guest right now. Greg, welcome to The Other Side of Medicine.
Aloha, James. Good to be with you.
Good. Well, I'm glad that you are back again. But for our listening audience, we're here about maybe a month and a half or two ago, and we talked a lot about the orthomolecular medicine and what that means, and your father's work and his pioneering work with orthomolecular medicine. He was a colleague of Dr. Linus Pauling and many of the other leading authorities in nutritional medicine, the pioneers who really paved the way for what we're doing today with nutrition. So we're so thankful for your father. So, the legend that he is just living on within you. And so tonight we're going to be talking about the MTFHR gene. And so let's, for our listening audience, give us the Reader's Digest version on what is the MTFHR gene and what does it mean to our listening audience?
Well, MTHFR is one of the genes out of the literally tens of thousands of genes that are out there that are being tested under the title of methylation genetics, methylation genomics. And of course, MTHFR is just one piece of the puzzle. And as you'll see, I'll do a little presentation here. We'll go through and discuss a little bit, get the audience in tune to understand what is methylation, and which will lead us into, it'll make a little bit more sense. But in a nutshell, MTHFR stands for methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. And simply put, this is the enzyme that's responsible for the production of methylfolate. Methylfolate, one of the B vitamins that plays an overall role in the big picture of the methylation cycle.
Yeah, so what other key nutrients are involved? I know that B12 is involved. So those two are the key elements, right? How do they interplay?
They have a very specific role. And I think at the outset, probably before I get into the presentation, the one thing that the audience has to understand is that when we're talking methylation, we're talking about balance. And we're talking balance between methylfolate and vitamin B12 and the proper forms of these vitamins. And as we get into it, it'll become a little clearer. The different forms make a difference as well. But these are two of the big pieces of the puzzle. But all the B vitamins get into this. There are some other, terminology that you'll see as we go through the presentation that'll make it a little clearer for people. But at the outset, methylation is about balance, and it's important for everyone to know that it's more than just methyl vitamins and methylated vitamins.
Yeah,
Methyl
this is
vitamins are
this
important.
is really a hot topic today, and it's all over the internet, and there's a lot of confusion. And I'm just hoping tonight that you'll clear up some of the confusion for our listening audience because people are swayed by, you know, supplement companies just to buy supplements without having proper information. So I think our audience is going to be really able to get some really good value out of this tonight because you'll clear up some of this confusion.
Oh, absolutely. And when we're talking methyl, we're talking about very reactive molecules, and you can overdo it. And that's unfortunately what some people are doing, especially when it comes to taking supplemental methylfolate and excess methylfolate and excess methyl B12.
Well,
So,
before we dive into that,
yeah.
let's just kind of back up just a minute here. And your dad was, like I said earlier, a pioneer in the field of nutrition, and he paved the way for a lot of these um, awarenesses about, methylation and just nutrition in general. So, how influential was your dad in helping to get this information into the forefront of the, basic science community?
Well, interestingly enough, it's funny as I see more and more people mentioning the word methylation and methyl vitamins in particular. I kind of am humored by the fact that we started working in methylation 40 years ago, and we were brought into that field when my dad started studying a particular portion of the methylation cycle known as homocysteine. And again, when we get into the presentation, it'll become a little clearer for you. But homocysteine is one of these molecules that is potentially, it has positive side to it, but there's also a dark side to homocysteine, as homocysteine has an ability to lower blood flow and cause the blood to get very, very thick. And this can lead to major disease, things like heart disease, stroke, cancer, blood vessel damage, these kinds of things. And of course, for the audience, a lot of people who are facing the preliminary stages before they've had a major event, things like chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, things that they can't figure out what's happening to me. As they dig into this, you'll start to realize that homocysteine, along with other clotting factors that cause your blood to get thick and to clot, can lead to the suffocation of your cells, which is not a good thing for inflammatory conditions. And it's not very good when you're trying to heal,
Yeah.
because ultimately,
Once again, we need to really emphasize for our listening audience that we are talking with a gentleman who was influenced by his dad, who was a pioneer in the field of nutrition. And his dad was exploring the potential hazards and benefits of homocysteine over 40 years ago. And today, it's one of the hottest topics in the field of functional medicine and nutrition. So I want our listening
well,
audience to just sit back and realize that you have privy to a lot of information that a lot of people didn't have many, many years ago. And so you've watched a lot of things over time that have been twisted, and people have a little bit of knowledge. It could be dangerous. And so I really want people to
absolutely.
understand.
And there's a big picture to this. I mean, certainly for me, not only did I see these things in my dad's practice growing up, for me, it was life-saving. I was ADD and lead poisoned as a child and was acting out and having issues myself. And I was very fortunate because in 1967, my dad, who was a classically trained physician, comes out of New York Hospital and Cornell and Stanford University. He was scientific enough and open-minded enough that he wanted to identify whether or not his patients were malnourished. And so the real instigator for all this was my dad's curiosity, and he started doing vitamin testing to identify who in his medical practice was malnourished. He was not prepared for what he found. And especially back in those days, it was considered heresy to even consider that a patient would be malnourished and need support. But that simple act of just asking the question, "Is my patient malnourished?" changed my dad's entire medical career forever. And So that was a big step, a big leap forward.
Sure. And you followed in his footsteps. He inspired you to continue to learn and to grow. And you were around his peers and around his lectures. And so you were privy to a lot of information that a lot of people would have loved to have been around. So you have a really good background. So I want our listening audience to understand your ability to be able to demonstrate these genetic, mutations and the nutritional problems that coincide with it. So go ahead and continue on now with your presentation, if you would.
Sure. Let me turn this on here. I'll share my screen, and I will.
So just for our listening audience, you have to realize that here on the other side of medicine, we bring you cutting edge information every single week. We have people like Greg and the people around him that have influenced the development and the growth of nutrition in this country. And we have doctors and researchers from all over the country and the world bringing you the latest information on nutrition and functional medicine and how to help your body to repair and heal itself. Because that's what we have inside of us. And we just need to awaken that. And with nutrition and lifestyle, proper mindset, we can really help to mitigate so much of the chronic disease that we have here in this country. So, Greg, go ahead.
You bet. And of course, the exciting thing and what you'll see as we go through this presentation and the material that I have here for you today is the exciting thing is that these are elements, these orthomolecules, these are elements that we can measure and we can functionally impact these pathways. So for the audience, just so they know, I'm the founder with my dad at Olaloa and drinkyourvitamins.com. Today, we're going to be diving into this powerful biochemical process that's referred to as methylation. And I presume you can see all the slides that are coming through right now?
Absolutely. Good. Perfect.
So at the outset, it's important for the audience to understand, don't be intimidated by the chemistry. Don't be overwhelmed by this. I put this here because it's a resource. All this information is available on our website, and you could go back to the diagrams and zero in on them. But what's important here is to kind of get a working understanding of basically the gears and how this methylation system works. And what you're seeing here is just a graphic representation of the overall system.
It looks like the city of New York roadmap.
When we're talking methylation, we're talking really about the story of carbon. And while we're made of carbon, what's exciting here and what's interesting to note is the fact that most carbon compounds are actually toxic to the human body. You take a look at carbon monoxide, obviously what comes out of your tailpipe, not too good for you. We get rid of acids by breathing and exhaling carbon dioxide. If you start to add more hydrogens, you get into methane, ethanol, and of course with nitrogen, you get into cyanide. But this system that we're talking about today, when we're talking methylation, we're talking about a very special form of carbon known as methyl carbon. And that methyl carbon travels from place to place in the body. And with enzymes on one side and vitamin cofactors on the other, it's transferred from place to place, and it creates a series of conversions. There are literally hundreds of molecular products that come out of this incredible process, this simple yet complex process of moving this one special carbon from place to place. And for us, we see methylation as really it's the adaptive system of the body. And really, the way we look at it is that it's the fundamental determinant of your health. And it's what we use as really the starting point to do a full comprehensive assessment as to how you're doing. Because if you don't methylate well, a whole host of problems can occur, from heart disease, stroke, cancer, blood vessel damage, mood disorders, inflammatory diseases. Some of the things that I already mentioned, all you'll see relate to this. So when you're looking at methylation, you'll start to realize it's the key to heart function and circulation, digestion, detoxification, immunity, brain function, and energy regulation of all the cells of your body.
Greg, hold on just a second, okay? Just
Sure.
for our listening audience, so we don't lose them here, okay?
Yeah, of course.
At a real fundamental level here, okay? We're talking about methylation as it relates to the nutrition that we intake from our food, and if we decide to take supplementation, to get the best out of the supplementation that we're using. So we have to understand that our nutrition, okay, is going to determine the outcome of our health and well-being. Okay, let's just take it at a very simplistic level.
That's a very important point. And in particular, I start here with the understanding of circulation specifically, because it's very common that people have a blockade when they talk methylation. Probably the most common blockade here that's of life-threatening situation is the ability to process this potentially toxic intermediary, homocysteine.
But Greg, if you will, let me just kind of finish my thought process.
Of course.
If it's okay. So the idea, okay, is that we're talking about this nutrition that we derive from the foods and supplementation that we take. And just like a farmer understands that plants, when the farmer puts a seed in the ground, that plant needs to have nutrients. And if the plant doesn't grow properly, the farmer's thinking about nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, minerals. The farmer's thinking that there's something that's missing that plant is not getting, and the farmer understands that. And so the life of the plant is dependent upon nutrition. Our bodies are dependent on the same. And when we have glitches and we're not getting, or we have a genetic mutation perhaps, or we're not getting the nutrients that we need, or we're getting too much.
I'm sorry? James, are you there? I think I lost you there for a minute.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just talking about how the farmer depends upon nutrients to help the plant to grow properly.
Yes.
And if the plant is missing some nutrients, then the plant's not going to grow properly. And the farmer then integrates the nutrition for that plant.
Exactly.
And giving it fertilizer, then hopefully it's organic. But the point being is that when our bodies are deficient and we have mutations of these genetic mutations, and we're not getting the right type of nutrients that we need, then people end up typically going to doctors, and they end up having a diagnosis that they don't need because they have a nutritional deficiency, perhaps. Many people do. Then they end up getting some chemical, a drug that they don't need for some disease that they really don't have. That's
exactly right. And unfortunately,
and then lastly, okay, they end up, suffering with illness for many years until someone like yourself comes along, or myself, or your dad's doctor like your dad, and we look at the root cause and we give the nutrition to help the body to repair and heal itself. That's what we're talking about here.
Absolutely. We're able to identify where the deficiency is and where the blockade is. We're actually looking. The problem with this is, unfortunately, conventional medicine is working without a full deck. They don't get all this data, and they don't know the full biochemical individuality of the patients that they're serving. So certainly this is a big piece of the puzzle, and I mentioned homocysteine again because it's the fundamental, central gear of the overall cycle. And of course, your body is designed to be able to make this homocysteine not toxic and convert it back into this essential amino acid called methionine. And if you don't get methionine, you die. So the chemistry of our bodies has been safeguarded for us to protect us so that we have this ability. Unfortunately, there are many people who are symptomatic, especially with major disease, who have a blockade here right at the center of the diagram that you see right here. And ultimately, just so they have a working knowledge of this, you want to be able to convert this potentially toxic substance, homocysteine, back into methionine. If you have elevated homocysteine, and we'll get into this, a low SAM concentration, that's associated with chronic disease. So long story short, homocysteine is a potentially toxic substance, and it can lower blood flow by activated clotting mechanisms. We don't have to get into all the details of this, but it impacts with fibrinogen and lipoprotein A. For those people out there who are concerned about heart disease and things of that nature and cancer, this is definitely a big piece of the puzzle, and we can talk more about this afterwards. But just so you know, your body needs methionine, but at the same time, the excess methionine can lead to lowering of blood flow. And the original studies that were done showed that when you got excess methionine, you could actually lower blood flow by as much as 85%. Again, this is what ischemia is all about, and ultimately leads to the suffocation of your cells, and naturally all the tissues of the body suffer. So ultimately, if you were to get to the fundamental foundation, ultimately when it comes to methylation, we're trying to go from homocysteine to methionine, and from methionine, we're trying to produce a substance that many people maybe have heard of called SAMe. That's a sulfur adenosyl methionine. Again, you don't have to worry about all the chemical names. It's just an idea, so it puts it all together and starts to make sense for you. This is the most powerful impact of the methylation cycle. You need to produce SAMe because that is the universal methyl donor for all those transactions that I was starting to talk about.
So once again, real simplistically, our body needs homocysteine in relatively amounts that are beneficial.
Right.
Then it's going to make methionine from that, and then it's going to go into SAMe. Just
that is
step
correct.
1, 2, 3. Step
right.
1, 2, 3.
And then from there, all these critical products you'll see as we go through this, all these important products that control and regulate your body chemistry are being made through this process. Again, I'm not going to get too detailed about this, but the first organ of the body that starts to fail when you're not methylating well is your pancreas. And when the pancreas starts to fail, it stops producing digestive enzymes very well, and it stops producing bicarbonate very well, and it leads to a host of digestive trauma. So again, people rush out, they're doing probiotics, and they're not addressing the real issue. And again, I know this is a little heavy, but there's a critical step involved in the digestion, which leads to a turn-off switch that turns off the acidity of the stomach, and it's called methylhistamine. That's all you really need to know for this, and we can get into this in more detail as I finish up with it. The next step, of course, along the way, our bodies are constantly in detoxification mode, and ultimately, your body is striving to produce the master antioxidant of the body, a substance called glutathione. This is a very important methylation process. And if you're not producing glutathione, there's a good chance that you are very sensitive to environmental poisons, and you go into agriculture areas or you're around pesticides and herbicides and fungicides, and you don't feel too good. Or if you get heavy metals, you don't feel too good. So This is, as you go down to the bottom of this map, you go through what's known as the transsulfuration pathway. It brings you down, and it takes the homocysteine and brings it down ultimately to get to glutathione. That's why homocysteine is not all bad. It's just got to be balanced. Again, that's the big thing about methylation. Identify these key components and make sure that you're in balance so that you could produce these essential substances. Immunity, big subject. Of course, everyone wants to be healthy and stay well. Thymidine is the master regulator of the immune system and ultimately responsible for protecting our DNA and RNA, because we're constantly being hit with these threats. And again, methylation of uridine to thymidine is required for a very important part of the white blood cell, the lymphocytes, which are very powerful against viruses, cancer, microbial enemies, and of course, again, stabilization of DNA and RNA. If your DNA and RNA get corrupted, you're at high risk for a lot of problems, in particular, cancer. So
once again, for our listening audience, the DNA and RNA is the genetic coding. And as Greg is saying, if that gets disruptive, then you're going to set yourself up for cancer and other chronic disease.
You get right. And this is called, you get aberrant methylation, and you get rogue cells. And then you get a collection of rogue cells, of course, which become out of control. And of course, that in a nutshell is cancer. So
another thing our listening audience needs to understand is that you may have a disposition in your family history, the genetic predisposition towards cancer or heart disease, but that's not a death warrant. Because if your nutrition is right, if your environment and you're living in a healthy environment, you won't turn on the genes that you have inside that you've inherited. They won't turn on.
Well, that's just it. These epigenetics, these elements that control turning on and turning off, a lot of this is, again, protected through nutritional support. You're able to support these enzymes and these genetic elements. So there is something you can do. The amazing thing about this, James, of course, and as we're having this discussion, is the fact that most people go through their medical challenges in life not really knowing what's going on with their individual chemistry. These elements, these orthomolecules, these are the elements that control and regulate our life. Our individual biochemistry is controlled by these things. And if you become malnourished, you are in potentially a very serious problem, because you have to remember a nutrient deficiency can be fatal. And of course, weakness occurs prior to death. So again, methylation of DNA and RNA, again, you don't need to know all the details of it, but you can see it on our website. Brain and mood, neurotransmitters, acetylcholine, dopamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine, serotonin, how we think, how we feel, how our outlook is on life, all controlled through the production of these neurotransmitters and these methylation byproducts. And a big one, of course, is myelin production, which protects the nerve sheath. You see all these people who are coming down with MS, and it's common, for example, to see these people are significantly deficient in vitamin B12 and poor methylators, and don't have the building blocks to be able to protect themselves. And then unfortunately, they get progressively worse and get more damaged.
Yeah, the good news is, again, is that we can determine these nutritional deficiencies. We can then intervene by giving you the foods that have those nutrients and supplementation, so that then your body can self-regulate it and then be able to either reverse or prevent those conditions.
Yes. Energy. Another reason why so many people take vitamin supplements is that they feel like they're dealing with poor energy levels. All of your energy regulators, both cellular and muscle energy regulators, creatine, carnitine, CoQ10, calmodulin, and of course, SAMe, made through the methylation process. Ultimately, at the end of the day, when you really look at it, you start to realize there is no state of disease that does not, in one way or another, impact methylation. Does not impact, from MS, ALS, depression, schizophrenia, dementia, neuropathy, insomnia. I mean, you just go down the list here.
Autism, any of those things.
Absolutely. Inflammation, all the gallbladder problems, digestion, and of course, infection, anemia, leukemia,
autoimmune diseases.
All of this is related. Now, how does it get impacted? Well, there are two major areas. Poison. Poison is a very good way to impact the methylation cycle.
And by the way, may I pause for a minute? That's
Sure.
why I really want to give a shout out and an applaud to Robert F. Kennedy talking about poisons and toxins in our environment. He's exposing these things and educating our public, the American citizens, about how these toxins in our food supply, in our air, and our water are influencing our children from getting autism, and people who are older that are getting Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and ALS. And not only those things, but cancers and heart disease are all influenced by these toxins, by these poisons that you're talking about right now.
Well, what's amazing too is, again, the conventional medical world, here it is more than 50 years later. My dad started the hair test in 1968. First, he identified malnutrition in his patients. There was 100% across the board, which is something you don't normally see in medicine. Nothing's 100%. Well, sick people, can you imagine sick people would be malnourished? Yeah. In 68, my dad basically put the hair test and the heavy metal testing on the map, and it was extraordinary. And the number of people that we saw, especially back in the 60s and 70s, loaded with lead, mercury, cadmium, arsenic. I mean, thank God, you're absolutely right. We've been fighting to get this, fluoride, poison out of our water supply for years and years. Finally, we've got people in Washington, and I am with you, James. I applaud Bobby Kennedy that he is actually, taking these things on and bringing the data forward. Unfortunately, there are some people who, even with the data in front of them, they for some reason, it's almost like they can't see.
Well, no, it's all about money. It's about big business that is trying to block the things that he's trying to bring to the forefront. So we know that it's all about the money. Follow the money. Follow the money trail.
I think people are waking up. So on the methylation side of it, yes, poison is one piece of the puzzle. Genetic mutations are another. And of course, this is where everybody's heading these days. Everyone is now starting to talk about gene testing. And it is interesting information. I don't want to completely downplay it, but I want to make it clear. We're talking tens of thousands of genes, and here when they're talking methylation and some of the gene testing that's being done, it's relatively limited. It's important to understand gene testing in and of itself does not give you the whole picture. And of course, the one major gene test that people are running these days is this MTHFR. Now, we started doing MTHFR. We were one of the first groups to do it. And I want to take away some of the mystery of it. So we'll go through this pretty quickly, and I hope it'll reassure people. MTHFR, methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. It's an enzyme that leads to the production of methylfolate. Okay. What people don't understand is what methylfolate does. Its primary role is it transfers the methyl group from methylfolate to hydroxy B12. And that's why understanding vitamin B12 within the methylation cycle is so important, because methylfolate gives its methyl group to hydroxy B12 to make methyl B12 on demand as needed intracellularly. That's its role, okay? So it'll restore methionine. That we talked about methionine, this very important, crucial molecule that feeds the entire methylation cycle. So here's, again, homocysteine to methionine. Now, all the mutation means, and this is where a lot of people get confused. You know, many of the healthiest people that we see are MTHFR mutated, either heterozygous or homozygous. I have a 94-year-old uncle who's double mutated, homozygous, MTHFR. He's very healthy, okay? Yeah, all it means is you have a reduced capacity to make methylfolate. If you have from one family member, about a 20% if you're heterozygous, and about a 50% less if you're homozygous. So where do we get methionine? Because that's what this is all about. We need to restore methionine. Well, methionine comes from animal protein. That's typically where people get it. In the plant world, you have to eat your cruciferous vegetables. And this is where it's kind of interesting, because a lot of vegans in particular have weak pancreatic function and are having digestive problems. And this is one of the reasons why they will stay away from sulfur-based vegetables, because they get gassy and distended and they just don't feel good, when in fact they really have a methylation crisis that's going on.
Well, let me just add something here, because
Sure.
I can help those individuals who have that problem by suggesting that they use something like broccoli sprouts, because sprouts are pre-digested for them. They're easier to be able to assimilate those nutrients in them, and you won't have that problem. And the nutrients are magnified, sometimes hundreds of times more, when you sprout a seed like broccoli. So for our listening audience who are vegans, you can use something like broccoli sprouts and other types of cruciferous vegetable sprouts to get a much easier digestible food for them.
Yeah, it's very interesting, because a lot of vegans don't know this relationship. Many of them do, of course, know about vitamin B12 and potential risk on the B12 side, but many of them are not really aware of this essential need for methionine. And so it's not uncommon when typically when we see vegans who are having health challenges, it's very common to see that they're running both low B12 and low methionine, and have a very disrupted methionine synthase. So they don't process their homocysteine very well. Certainly mutations are the norm. In our practice, in my dad's clinic, we would see typically 86% of the people were mutated for MTHFR. But interestingly enough, that was not their big problem. About 76% of them were mutated at MTRR or MTR, which puts them at risk, especially for detoxification of homocysteine. But clearly, we as a species, we are all mutants, and mutations are out there. So my reassurance to the audience is, it's not your mutations, it's how you adapt to your mutations. And if you're gonna, I'm sorry?
That's a good point. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, so the only way to really understand that, to find out how are you adapting to those mutations, you really have to do the real blood work. You need to check, and the reason why I show these diagrams is to get people to understand these are the key components that are on the chart: homocysteine, glutathione, SAM, SA, methionine, sarcosine, you know, all the B vitamins. I mean, this testing, it's crossover. Yes, we do specifics for the methylation pathway. We get specifics about B12. We get specifics about folate. But we want to know, do you have the supporting cofactor vitamins so that you can support this pathway, so you can restore functionality and have proper methylation? So again, methylation is about balance, and you know, methylfolate can be impacting it. You can certainly throw people off, and I should at least mention that there are plenty of people who go overboard and will have a negative experience where they'll take methylfolate and methyl B12, and they run into a risk known as the methylfolate trap, and they can't use the methyl group off that folate, and that can cause a whole host of negative anxiety and cause people to feel terrible. Copper deficiency.
Greg, let me just make a point here.
Yeah.
You know, we mentioned about looking at all the cofactors and the nutrients that are involved in the methylation. I've been testing my patients' blood for nutrients, micronutrients, for over 25 years. And a lot of doctors are still not even doing that. But I've been doing it for over 25 years. And there's specific labs that really have been the leaders in the forefront.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As we said, we talked about it before. SpectraCell is, I think everybody, it would really be a good idea for everybody to get a baseline. If you've never done a vitamin screen, get a SpectraCell micronutrient test, and
Yeah,
it's like checking the oil in your car.
I was using that lab, it's like I said, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Very few doctors even knew about it.
Yeah. And it's frustrating because I don't think people can believe that medicine is so compartmentalized, and that they're working with, like I say, they're working with half a deck. They don't have all the data.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have to advocate for yourself and learn a little bit about this and integrate this into your own healthcare, because if you don't do it, no one will.
Yeah, and what we're saying here is, if you end up taking, like, methylfolate and you don't need it, you could cause complications. You can cause hazards in the body and cause illness by getting too much if you don't test and see if you actually need it.
Well, some of these methyl groups and methyl compounds are very reactive. Methylfolate is one. It's actually it's not very stable. That's why and you don't take in huge amounts of methylfolate. I mean, as it is, vegans, generally speaking, take in quite a bit of methylfolate. They're eating green leafy vegetables. So the best way to get your methylfolate is through food and minimal heat. Because, like I say, methylfolate oxidizes very quickly. Methyl B12 itself is very unstable and very photolabile. The only way to really use methyl B12 is as an injection. When you put it in your mouth, it can pull mercury out of your silver amalgams and your stomach lining and actually form methyl mercury. The active form methyl B12, like adenosyl B12, is designed to be made intracellularly on demand under a very tightly regulated system. And like I say, the form of B12 that preferentially enters the cell is hydroxycobalamin, it's the only B12 we've used in Olaloa products now for 26 years. So here, just so you know, I'm just showing copper deficiency can lower methylation significantly, and copper excess, again, balance. All these things are about balance.
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about
how you talked about B vitamins and folate, B12. Talk about getting too much of niacin, how that could be a problem too.
Well, niacin, of course, is a B vitamin. There are two forms. There's the flushing form called niacin, and there's another form, niacinamide, which does not cause a flush. Some people get a little carried away and they'll have their first experience with it. They're not used to it, but there's a prostaglandin impact that takes place. You can read about this on our website. My dad's work with niacin in the 70s. It causes a flush reaction. Mm-hmm. The skin heats up and it can feel a little inflammatory and can scare people. Certainly, it has been a very powerful tool for people who, especially in the psychiatric world and with schizophrenics. So it can be a very important aspect there. And it gets into cholesterol as well. But these things, again, they all work together. Copper works with cholesterol. Copper works with iron. These things are all about balance. Here in the B12 story, I try and give people an understanding. Like I say, methyl and adenosyl B12, these are the two active forms of B12, but they're designed to be made in the cell. The form that gets into your cell readily is the hydroxy form. And that's why we've been using it all this time. And just so you understand this, with the big picture of methylation and homocysteine reduction, for B12 and folate to work properly, it requires at a minimum 3 enzymes. And really, it's even more than that. You get into the folate pathway, and we don't want to go there today, but the folate pathway gets you into 13 enzymes, and biopterin comes into this. It's very heavy duty. But for B12 and folate, a lot of enzyme activity, an ideal diet, and a lot of good fortune that's happening in the digestive system. Because as I say, methylfolate and vitamin B12 in general are very fragile. They can be injured and damaged very quickly, and they can be blockaded at the center there where you see MS, the methionine synthase. Mother Nature has a back door, and it has a protection for us. It's called trimethylglycine or betaine. This is what you get out of beets. And here you see that for betaine to work, betaine will lower homocysteine even when B12 and folate fail. And it's not diet dependent. In fact, if you go on a fast, go into ketosis, your body will start to produce more BHMT. And this is oftentimes one of the reasons why people will feel so good, especially cardiac and cardiovascular patients who have a problem with homocysteine, and they start to fast, and all of a sudden they get a little betaine in the diet, and it's like magic. They start to feel like themselves again. So we're bypassing all that stuff with the folate and the B12 with that one little enzyme there, BHMT, trimethylglycine, TMG, betaine, will lower the homocysteine. And it's known as the methionine synthase bypass. Just for support, I just wanted you to see this. This is a study that was just showing that for those people who have trouble with cobalamin chaperones and MTHFR, it's recommended use hydroxy B12. So in a nutshell, that's methylation. At Olaloa, we developed the first comprehensive methylation support product line 27 years ago. Our multi provides 1,000 milligrams of betaine and 1,000 milligrams of glycine. And that glycine, we didn't really touch on that today, but glycine is very important, in particular for the final stage of methylation. Again, it's important for the audience to understand, yes, we need methyl in the system, but it's equally as important that you have the ability to remove these excess reactive methyl groups through the production of sarcosine, and that's done through another enzyme called GNMT, glycine N-methyltransferase. So we have you covered there. Just to put it in perspective as well, 1,000 milligrams of betaine, 1,000 milligrams of glycine. To do this in diet, you'd have to eat about 3 pounds of beets. Mm-hmm. So this is this is a great this fills in the gaps, for those people who you just can't eat enough. This is a very powerful foundation, providing your N-acetylcysteine, your CoQ10, all your fat solubles, A, D, E, K, all your B vitamins, and it functions as a multi-mineral product. Yes, we are the best vitamin drink of natural news. We're used by a number of well-known people in the preventive, alternative medical, orthomolecular space, people like Jonathan Wright.
Well, Jonathan Wright has been a guest on The Other Side of Medicine in the past. So yeah, he's one of the pioneers again in this field of functional medicine. And once again, for our listening audience benefit, you and your dad were promoting this product and giving it to your dad's patients 27 years ago, whereas this topic today is one of the hottest topics in the nutrition world. And you guys were doing that 27 years ago. So our listening audience needs to know that this is the leading edge formulation that was put together by one of the pioneers. So if you're looking for a product that's going to make a difference in your life, that's going to not only make a difference, but it actually tastes wonderful. I use the orange flavor energy, the multivitamin, and it's just an extraordinary, product with a delicious flavor. It's all
Well,
that.
I appreciate that, James. You know, I was a little selfish about creating it. In large measure, it was actually made from me, and I actually wound up going into developing this as a powder for my son. When my son was just 2 or 3 years old is when we started to develop this, and I realized the more I would talk to our patients, were telling me it was harder and harder for them to take pills all the time, and they wanted an alternative. And this is very convenient. Our product is so gentle, you can do it with or without food on an empty stomach. It functions as a digestive aid, and it really makes the experience a pleasurable experience. And for a lot of people who won't take vitamins at all, it almost becomes kind of a lifestyle experience. I mean, I have people who come from a lot of different backgrounds who have used the product, whether they're athletes or big partiers, or people who unfortunately are dealing with very serious medical conditions, and especially cancer patients who have a very difficult time, whether it's eating or taking capsules or pills, tablets, in particular. They do very, very well using our product. And a lot of times they almost even forget that they're taking a vitamin product.
Sure, sure. Well, Greg, we've just about run out of time. So is there anything that you like to share in parting with today?
The important thing is we've done a lot of the work for you, and we've made this easy. I encourage everybody to peruse our website and look into the articles, because we have a lot of information there about my dad's work and orthomolecular medicine, and understand that we have the tools to be able to identify what's going on with your individual chemistry. If your doctor won't do this for you and won't run a micronutrient test, and they won't do toxic analysis for you, and won't do clotting, find out these data points will pay you back in spades. And
yep. Once again, for our listening audience's benefit, I do these tests on a routine basis, and I've been doing them for 30 years. So you can get in touch with me as well at theothersideofmedicine.com. And then I encourage you to go to Greg's website. Once again, what is it, Greg?
You can go to drinkyourvitamins.com or olaloa.com. And you feel free to call us. I'm available. I'm always ready to talk to people and help them any way I can.
Yeah, now I really want to applaud you for that, because you are somebody who is extremely knowledgeable. We appreciate your time with this episode, and we're going to have you back, I'm sure, Greg. So thank you so much. And for our listening audience, I encourage you get to listen to me on the social media. I'm on Facebook, on Instagram, on X, on YouTube, and I'm posting 2 times a day, giving you cutting edge information that you're not going to get from your doctor, because doctors are being influenced by big pharmaceutical businesses. And again, we need to get back to taking charge of our own health and letting the body do what it does best, and that's heal itself. But it needs the resources, like the supplements we talked about tonight, like the foods that provide the nutrients that we need. And you need to take a proactive role. So, Greg, once again, thank you for coming on The Other Side of Medicine, and we'll have you back again in the future.
Good to be with you.
Friends, take care, everybody. Ciao for now.
Aloha.